Just talking about the details of the war, and you've lost people not once, not twice, but 3 times. They've fallen asleep like 10 minutes ago. And so not seeing a clear way out, not being completely fluent in the language of deadly quagmire on an epic scale, people kind of tune out, right? And we have a role here, right? We have a role and a task here as peace activists, as organizers. And our role is not to teach the grammatical nuances of the language of deadly quagmire on an epic scale, right? Our role is to say you don't need a PhD in foreign affairs to say that this war is wrong, to say that withdrawal needs to be immediate and complete, to say that we should not be spending our blood and our treasure on wars of preemptive aggression based on lies. And to say, in fact, it's the PhDs and the experts who got us into this war. The armchair warriors, were the ones who said this would be easier. So it takes courage and moral and political clarity to reject the Padre Barn kind of maxim of the war, right? We broke it, we bought it. End of story, right? It's just like end of discussion. And we need to be able to say, rock is not a vase, it's not a candelabra, right? And we need to say to Washington, you broke it, and we're not buying it. And at the same time, we need to acknowledge that we do have a responsibility. We do have a responsibility to the Iraqi people, and that one way or the other, we will be paying for the Iraq War forever. We will be paying for the Iraq War forever. These 2 economists, Stiglitz and Bilms, wrote this book, The $3 Trillion War. And even as the book came out, right, Joseph Stiglitz was on the radio saying, it's more like 5. It's more like 5 trillion. The book is 3 trillion, the $3 Trillion War. And by the time the books were in the bookstores, Stiglitz was saying it's a $5 trillion war, right? The number had almost essentially doubled. So there are comprehensive and thoughtful and complete withdrawal plans, right? They're there. You can download them off the web. George Lopez at Notre Dame has a really good plan, right? Some colleagues at the PDA, Project on Defense Alternatives, have come up with this formulation: quickly, carefully, generously. Quickly, carefully, generously. So we should know these plans, right? We should know them. They're clear, and they're certainly more complete than what we hear from either of our presidential candidates. And we should know them, but we don't need to be so bogged down, right? We don't need to be bogged down in the details. And I think we can simply say, the U.S. occupation is a catalyst and a cause of violence. It's not a deterrence. The U.S. forces there are doing no good, and that immediate and complete withdrawal from Iraq is not a 18-month or a 24-month process. It's an executive order, right? Withdraw from Iraq and deal with the consequences, right? And there will be consequences. So if we can't stand up for all that, if we can't do all of that, if we can't see our way through all of these sort of details that are at the same time, they're very important and they're very distracting, right? They're important and distracting. If we can't see our way through all of that, we fall back on another myth. We fall back on the myth that we can express our anti-war sentiment through candidates. That a Democratic majority in Congress, the so-called revolution of 2006, or an Obama in the White House can fulfill our anti-war agenda, right? The myth that the right politician will say the right thing at the right time, and these magical incantations will part the quagmire like Moses parted the Red Sea, and allow a new administration to do right everything that the Bush administration did wrong, is just that, right? It's a myth. And I'm not saying that just because I have found these last 2 years of campaigning emotionally and physically exhausting, right? It's been just to pay attention to all of these candidates has been, basically a full-time job. But politicians won't save us, and democracy is not lever pulling or chad punching. Right? It's not branding or messaging or framing or dividing the new micro-interest group, right? I think the newest is the hockey mom. God help us, right? And it's not one day every 2 or 4 years, right? And when we seed these answers, when we say this person or that person will figure it all out, when we seed the answers to some politician, we invest in other people and we invest in other systems. What we really need to be investing in ourselves and in one another, in our movements, in expanding the circle that we have here this evening. It puts our hope and our energy into the hands of other people who have other agendas and other masters. And so that's not to say that it doesn't matter at all, right? But it is to say that it's not enough, right? That we are the alternative, we are the answer. And if you're looking around this room, I know you're all facing this direction, but if you're in this room and you're thinking, the we feels pretty small, I think that's a good thing, right? Because it means that we're coming to grip with the truth that in the midst of all of these myths, we need to be self-critical, we need to challenge one another, and we need to do more. We need to do more, and we need to be more, and we need to reach out more, and we need to be more welcoming, right? And we can't wait, right? We can't wait for a leader, we can't wait for a plan, and we can't wait for things to get worse than they already are, you know, and they are precipitously, right, getting worse and worse and worse. We cannot wait for the answers to come from someone else. We have those answers, and I think we know that we have those answers, right? What's the alternative to depression and recession? That answer is sharing. What's the alternative to the mortgage crises? What's the alternative to the mortgage crisis? It's collective ownership, right? It's some sort of different form of ownership than we have right now. What's the alternative to hunger besides Drake's Diner, right? It's farms and it's gardens. What's the alternative to war and terrorism? It's international cooperation. It's universally accepted and enforced norms for nation states. It's development that meets people's needs. What's the alternative to prisons, to soulless schools, to militarized borders, to capitalism and market-driven globalization, to cluster bombs, right? We know the answers to all of these questions, and the answer is the same, right? The answer is it's us. And we can answer these questions together, and we can create those alternatives together, and we can enact and create or generate new truths that replace and sort of take over from the myths that get in our way. And as we look towards 2009, as we look towards a new administration, as we look towards war that continues, as we look towards crisis, economic crisis and sort of spiritual crisis that deepens here in the United States, that doesn't seem like the warmest comfort of all, but it is the resource that we need to be mining together. So that's the end.